PSA have recently and quite discreetly made quite a small change to their grading standards, but what could potentially have huge impact on the future of prices of their graded slabs. Now, of course, myself and this channel is purely about Pokemon and the TCG, but this applies to everyone as these standards cover all types of cards. So baseball cards, football cards, Pokemon cards, Yu-Gi-Oh cards, you name it, the change is across the board. So whether or not you're a collector of PSA slabs or you just simply like to send in singles to PSA to be graded, you're going to want to watch this video so that you're aware of what these changes are so that you don't get caught out. Potentially you could send in a card thinking it's going to get a PSA 10, but in fact it's now only a 9. So what are the changes? Right. Here next to me, I have a picture of the old standards from the PSA website. And as you can see, we're going to focus on the very bottom part. The part where it says the image must be centered on the card within a tolerance not to exceed approximately 55-45 to 60-40% on the front and 75-25% on the reverse. So now that we've had a look at the old standards, now let's have a look at the new ones and where it changes. Again, we're going to go down to the bottom, and as you can see next to me, it reads 55-45% on the front, and that's it. There's no 55-45 to 60-40 approximately. The back hasn't changed, that remains 75-25, which is fine, they're more lenient with that. But on the front exclusively, you can no longer have that parameter reach limits of 60-40. It has to remain within 55-45% centering on the front. So why exactly have PSA decided to change their standards? Now, very quickly, before we move on to some stats and compare those top grading companies, guys, just a huge thank you to all of you that continue to show me so much support on the channel and on these videos. If you are new here and you're not yet subscribed, please feel free to hit that subscribe button if you do enjoy the TCG related videos, and also hit that like button if you are enjoying the video, as it massively helps me out. Now, as we can see from the stats we have in front of us, you can see on February the 7th, yesterday, just how many items were graded from the top 4 grading companies. Now, as you can see, PSA, as we expect, leading the way with over 72,000 items graded just yesterday. CGC, SGC and Beckett just behind them with a combined total of just over 20,000. So as you can see, PSA grading almost 3.5 times 3 of their competitors combined in a single day. So of course that then begs the question, why would PSA, if they're so dominant in the grading market, make changes to their standards? Now the reason is, although PSA have a monopoly on the market in regards to number of submissions, that's simply because they've been around for a lot longer than the other grading companies. But when it comes to standards, PSA are not known for having the highest standards, and therefore the cards that are being graded, although they have the same grade, let's say a 10, are not necessarily as good a cards as 10s in other grading companies. So let's have a look at an example of what I'm talking about. So the example I've gone for and what I have in front of me is the Charizard VMAX from Shining Face. And as you can see here, I have a PSA 10 that sold recently for $227 US, more or less. Now this sold, as you can see here, on the 7th of February. Therefore we have a recent example, only sold yesterday. So it's a good indication as to what the current price is for this card and this grade with PSA. So PSA 10, $227 US. Then we have a look at the Pristine 10 in Beckett, $1,825 for exactly the same card. The Charizard VMAX from Shining Face. Look at that difference. We have a PSA 10, $227 US, and the Beckett Pristine 10 for $1,825 US. So if the grading market is so heavily dominated by PSA, we can see the figures next to me right now, we've been through them previously. If they're grading 72,500 cards just yesterday, comparison to Beckett's 3.1, why is a Beckett Pristine 10 so much more expensive than a PSA 10? Now the answer lies here on the website in the description of a Pristine 10 card for Beckett, or BGS, right? As you can see, the centering on the front has to be a perfect 50-50, and even on the back they're much tighter, with it being 60-40 in comparison to PSA's 75-25, which is the answer in key, right? As you can see, you have to have a perfect centering on the front of the card in order for it to qualify as a Pristine 10. So as you can see next to me here, we're comparing PSA's new standards of 55-45 to Beckett's 50-50, and on the back, PSA's 75-25 to Beckett's 60/40, which says it all, right? If you're getting a pristine 10 Beckett card, you have to have a 10 in all 4 subcategories, including centering, right? That centering on the front has to be perfect, whereas PSA, they have some leniency. Yes, they've pegged it back. It was 60/40 and can now be 55/45 for a PSA 10, their top grade, but the Beckett standards are still much higher than PSA's. You know the card inside that slab for a Beckett pristine 10 is a better quality card, it has better centering, etc, than that PSA 10, which is why it demands such a higher price. But with PSA making this change, what effect will that have going forward on the price of PSA 10 cards? Now, the probable outcome of this change from PSA is that cards graded after a certain point are probably going to be worth a little bit more in value. So I've chosen this Umbreon Ex here from Prismatic Evolutions just to give us an idea as to what point PSA have arrived to with their certificate numbers. As you can see, this is 103, 281, 182. So what probably people are going to be doing is say, you know what? We know that around this sort of time, PSA changed their standards. So any kind of certificate number above, let's say 104,000,000, we know that the standards were higher, the centering's probably better, and therefore it's a better quality card within. And therefore any card with certificate number higher than that number probably has a little bit more of a premium. It's probably a little bit more expensive than a card prior to that certificate number. Moving on to another example, we have the Umbreon VMAX from Evolving Skies. Now, as you can see, this certificate number is 769910049. Therefore, it's quite an old certificate number, right? And people might look at that in the future and be like, that's prior to that 104,000,000 mark. The centering's probably not great. And you can actually see the centering through the card. And although this looks okay, to be fair, looks decent, it's probably a little bit left to right. Therefore, people might look at it and think, you know what, I'm going to find an Umbreon VMAX that's graded after 104,000,000 in order to make sure that I'm getting a card that was held to higher standards, and therefore the centering is probably a little bit better than centering of cards graded prior to 104,000,000. So we've been through what the changes are, why they've potentially done it, and what the potential consequences of this change are. And me personally, I'm actually kind of glad they made this change. Although it makes grading cards that PSA 10 a little bit more difficult, it's better in the long run for PSA and for those of you that want to collect PSA 10 slabs, because you know that your card has been held to higher standards and therefore holds a higher value. Now, just like on the thumbnail of this video, there are potential of a lot of previously graded PSA 10 cards to now be PSA 9s. But of course, it doesn't matter if they've got a PSA 10, they're a PSA 10 forever, as long as they remain in that slab. I wouldn't worry about the consequences of previously graded cards. I only think it's going to have a positive impact on cards graded in the future and the prices of PSA 10s going forward. I do just think PSA 10s now have a little bit more of a premium. They have tighter standards, and therefore the prices of PSA 10s could potentially rise a little bit in the future, as we now know the cards within it, as I've said, are better cards that have been held to higher standards, therefore are worth a little bit more because it's harder to get a PSA 10. Anyway, guys, that concludes today's video. I've enjoyed making it. I've enjoyed providing this information for you guys, so I really do hope you found it useful in some way, shape, or form. Guys, as I said before, please, if you are new here and you do enjoy these type of videos, please don't hesitate to hit that subscribe button and also leave a like if you have enjoyed the video, as it massively helps me out. Guys, if you haven't caught up yet on my 10 and under series, you can watch a couple of them videos right here. But apart from that, guys, thank you very much for watching. I've been PokeCharla, and I'll catch you in the next one.